Welcome to May's Fireside Chat. These videos are produced by Kincardine United Church to explore current issues and topics of interest from a Christian perspective. Let's start this reflection with a bit of humor to provide some wry reflection on the world today. In this cartoon, my love of math and puns intersects. My love of Star Trek and puns provides a second round of giggles. A third round of irony is found in this image, which combines my love for David Bowie and laughter. You get it? Ground control to Major Tom. Apparently, there are sign owners who share my love for puns. Even farm folk like to get in on the fun. In addition to their essential role in our society, I'm hoping physicians like this cartoon. I love to drink milk, but I didn't know this. Nor did I know that this was even a thing. As I get older, I find I am getting heavier. The reality of my age supposedly comes with wisdom. There are certainly an amazing number of jokes about aging. For example, I've reached the age where my train of thought often leaves the station without me. When I look in the mirror, the young man I once was no longer stares back. So let me share a bit of doggerel that reflects on my getting older. Old age is golden, I've oft heard it said, but sometimes I wonder as I crawl in my bed, with my ears in my drawer, my teeth in a cup, and my eyes on a shelf until I wake up. When sleep dims my eyes, I think to myself, is there anything else I should put on that shelf? The reason I know my youth has been spent is my get up and go just got up and went. But I really don't mind as I think with a grin of all the fun places my get up has been. And this last image that's on the screen now is of those who threw a surprise 70th birthday party for me while I was on study leave this month. This joy is where my get up is restored. We are in a youth-oriented culture. As a result, sadly, of our society wanting to force women to pay a bigger price for aging. We want women to look as young as possible while giving most men a pass on haunches, on baldness, on stiffness, and on bandy legs. Instead, I would suggest this hilarious musical video has something powerful to say about that sexist prejudice.
Well, I ain't 16, not a beauty queen, and my eyes are bagging and my skin is sagging, and if that's the reason that you don't love me, then maybe that's not love. Well, I ain't 20 either, and I don't care neither, and my hair is gray, and I like it that way, and if that's the reason that you don't love me, then maybe that's not love. If you don't think I rock, well, we ain't gonna roll. If you don't think I hung, well, my heart just turned to cold. If you want a young wish you well, sweet pea. Cause if you can't see what it is you have, then you ain't having me. I got cellulite and aching feet, and my thoughts gonna jiggle when I giggle or wiggle. And if that's the reason that you don't love me, then maybe that's not love. My tummy ain't tucked or lipo-sucked. It's a little poochie, but it's still hoochie coochie. And if that's the reason that you don't love me, then maybe that's not love. See, I'm no longer desperate, I'll only have a man if he has the smarts to see how hot that I still am. If you want a younger model, I wish you well, sweet pea. Cause if you can't see what it is you have, then you ain't having me. Older ladies, older ladies, older ladies are divine. Well, I got a chicken neck and I love it by heck. It makes a double chin whenever I grin. And if that's the reason that you don't love me, then maybe that's not love. I got saggy breasts that droop from my chest, burnt near down all the way to my nest. And if that's the reason that you don't love me, then maybe that's not love. If you don't think I rock, well, we ain't gonna roll. If you don't think I hung the moon, my heart just turned to cold. If you want a younger model, I wish you well, sweet pea. Cause if you can't see what it is you got, you ain't getting me. Older ladies, older ladies, older ladies are divine. Older ladies, older ladies, older ladies. What are we, ladies? We're divine. Oh, it was fun.
Right on. The other side of society's too lofty expectations for women as they age is that we laud those who manage to look younger than their chronological years would dictate. The next image I'm going to share with you is of two women, both featured on separate magazine covers. Both women are beautiful, but one woman's image is preferred by our societal standard of beauty, a warped standard. The one on the right, we all know, is Martha Stewart, age 81. The one on the left is Apple Wang Odd, age 106, a tribal tattooist in a remote province in the Philippines. And let's not forget the amount of privilege that Martha Stewart's kind of lifestyle requires. Apple Wang on the other hand, carries wisdom in every forehead, wrinkle, and frown line. She is stunning. Her eyes are glass, reflecting back all that she's witnessed over a century of lived experiences. Her tattoos are a reminder of the ancestors she honors. I asked an elderly man once what it was like to be old and to know the majority of his life was behind him. He told me that he was being the same age his entire life. He said the voice inside his head had never aged. He was always just being the same boy, his mother's son. He said he watched his body age and his faculties dull. The person he was inside never got tired, never aged, never changed. I now know what he meant. Our spirits are eternal. Our souls are forever. The next time you encounter an elderly person, whether it is in the mirror or not, know that they are still a child, just as you are still a child, needing love, attention, and purpose. After all, you don't stop having fun when you get old. You get old when you stop having fun. Indeed, don't worry about getting old. Worry about thinking old. I want to read you an excerpt from the Book of Life by Donna Ashworth. She writes this: "This world wants you to spend your precious time and money fighting the aging process and desperately trying not to take up too much space. when you could be spending both on adventures, new experiences, and spiritual journeys, all of which you will share with your loved ones, inspiring generations to come. Don't be fooled, beautiful one. You are not here to preserve, to mummify yourself in life. You are here to live. It's your stories, your advice, and your love which will last long after your death. As Albert Einstein wrote, do not grow old, no matter how long you live. Never cease to stand like curious children before the great mystery into which we were born. Pardon the rude gesture. While you are only young once, you can stay immature and indefinitely. Let me share with you a story based on one of my favorite comic strips, Calvin and Hobbes. The story imagines what might happen when Calvin is an old man on his deathbed. Calvin, Calvin, sweetheart. In the darkness, Calvin heard the sound of Susie, his wife of 53 years. Calvin struggled to open his eyes. God, he was so tired and it took so much strength. Slowly, light replaced the darkness and soon vision followed. At the foot of his bed stood his wife. Calvin wet his dry lips and spoke hoarsely. Did you find him? Yes, dear, Susie said, smiling sadly. He was in the attic. Susie reached into her big purse and brought out a soft, old orange tiger doll. Calvin could not help but laugh. It had been so long, too long. I washed him for you, Susie said, her voice cracking a little as she laid the stuffed tiger next to her husband. Thank you, Susie, Calvin said. A few moments passed as Calvin just laid on his hospital bed, his head turned to the side, staring at the old toy with nostalgia. Dear Calvin, finally said, would you mind leaving me alone with Hobbes for a while? I would like to catch up with him. All right, Susie said, I'll get something to eat in the cafeteria. I'll be back soon. Susie kissed her husband on the forehead and turned to leave. With a sudden but gentle strength, Calvin stopped her. Lovingly, he pulled his wife in and gave her a passionate kiss on the lips. I love you, he said. And I love you, said Susie. Susie turned and left. Calvin saw tears streaming from her face as she went out the door. Calvin turned to face his oldest and dearest friend. Hello, Hobbes. It's been a long time, hasn't it, old pal? Hobbes was no longer a stuffed doll, but the big furry old tiger Calvin had always remembered. It sure has, Calvin, said Hobbes. You haven't changed a bit, Calvin smiled. You've changed a lot, Hobbes said sadly. Calvin laughed. Really? I hadn't noticed at all. There was a long pause, the sound of a clock ticking away. The seconds rang throughout the sterile hospital room. So, you married Susie Durkins, Hobbes said, finally smiling. I knew you always liked her. Shut up, Calvin said, his smile bigger than ever. Tell me everything I missed. I'd love to hear what you've been up to, Hobbes said, excited. And so Calvin told him everything. He told him about he and Susie fell in love in high school and married after graduating from college, about his 3 kids and 4 grandkids, how he turned Spaceman Spiff into one of the most popular sci-fi novels of the decade, and so on. After he told Hobbes all this, there was another pregnant pause. You know, I visited you in the attic a bunch of times, Calvin said. I know, but I couldn't see you. All I saw was a stuffed animal. Calvin's voice was breaking and tears of regret started welling up in his eyes. You grew up, old buddy, said Hobbes. Calvin broke down and sobbed, hugging his best friend. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I broke my promise. I promised I wouldn't grow up and that we'd be together forever. Hobbes stroked Calvin's hair, or what little there was left of it. But you didn't. What do you mean? We were always together in our dreams. We were? We were. Hobbs? Yeah, well, buddy, I'm so glad I got to see you like this one last time. Me too, Calvin, me too. Sweetheart, Susie's voice came from outside the door. Yes, dear, Calvin replied. Can I come in? Susie asked. Just a minute. Calvin turned to face Hobbs one last time. Goodbye, Hobbs. Thanks for everything. No, thank you, Calvin, Hobbs said. Calvin turned back to the door and said, You can come in now. Susie came in and said, Look who's come to visit you. Calvin's children and grandchildren followed Susie into Calvin's room. The youngest grandchild ran past the rest of them and hugged Calvin in a hard, excited hug. Grandpa, screamed the child in delight. Frances, cried Calvin's daughter, be gentle with your grandfather. Calvin's daughter turned to her dad. I'm sorry, Daddy. Francis never seems to behave these days. He just runs around making a mess and coming up with strange stories. Calvin laughed and said, Well, now, that sounds just like me when I was his age. Calvin and his family chatted some more until the nurse said, I'm sorry, but visiting hours are almost up. Calvin's beloved family said goodbye and promised to visit the next day. As they turned to leave, Calvin said, Francis, come here for a second. Francis came over to his grandfather's side. What is it, Gramps? Calvin reached over to the stuffed tiger on his bedside and held him out shakily to his grandson, who looked exactly as he did so many years ago. This is Hobbs. He was my best friend when I was your age. I want you to have him. He's just a stuffed tiger, Francis said, eyebrows raised. Calvin laughed. Well, let me tell you a secret. Francis leaned closer to Calvin. Calvin whispered, if you catch him in a tiger trap using a tuna sandwich as bait, he will turn into a real tiger. Francis gasped in delight and in awe. Calvin continued, not only that, but he will be your best friend forever. Wow. Thanks, Grandpa, Francis said, hugging his grandpa tightly again. Francis, we need to go now, Calvin's daughter called. Okay, Francis shouted back. Take good care of him, Calvin said. I will, Francis said before running off after the rest of the family. Calvin laid back on his back and stared at the ceiling. The time to go was close. He could feel it in his soul. Calvin tried to remember a quote he read in a book once. It said something about death being the next great adventure or something like that. His eyelids grew heavy and his breathing slowed. As he went deeper into his final sleep, he heard Hobbs, as if he was right next to him in the bedside. I'll take care of him, Calvin. Calvin took his first step toward one more adventure and breathed his last with a grin on his face. Age is not something that should bring fear. As we age, we have the opportunity to grow into wisdom, becoming elders. Most of us fear death because it is the great unknown. We try to ignore it, to whistle as we walk past the graveyard, endeavoring to cling to our youth by ignoring age and death. Instead, let's consider our phobia about aging to be just as silly as the other phobias in this video. It appears we're having difficulty getting the video up, but never worry about it. is just a whole bunch of people who gather together in a group called Phobias Anonymous. It's a hilarious comedy sketch. You can probably find it if you Google it on YouTube online. I will say what never gets old for me is how privileged I am to have Judy Zarubik recording this fireside chat through her patient skill and attention to detail, not to mention her preparation, so all the technology works well. Indeed, without Terry Boyd and David Skinner, these videos would never get posted to our YouTube channel where you found us. I lean heavily on their teamwork. Thank you. Let me leave you with a poem as a prayer and as a blessing. I hope you get old. I hope time will become heavy on your bones, draped over you like an embrace from God. I hope the backs of your hands become deep maps of all the places you have been, dark stains where your fingers dipped into clay, dirt, and mud. I hope you get old. I hope time fills your heart with joy and triumph. I hope you have enough obstacles, challenges to teach you character and empathy, and enough scars to bestow you with uniqueness. I hope pain shows in how strong you are. It also shows you the value of a true friend. I hope you've been alone long enough to know and love yourself. I hope you discover serenity at the center of any chaos. I hope you get old, that time wraps around your legs like a desperate lover. I hope you can look into the faces of people, those you have loved and cherished, and those that leave you with veils of grief. For that grief demonstrates how deeply you were loved in turn. Hope you give thanks for every waking moment, for what you have and for what you have not. I hope you get old. I hope you make things that last. I hope you've inspired people. I hope you've helped someone. I hope grace rests at your feet. I hope you forgive everything you did not get quite right. Until our next fireside chat on June 13th, may you age with grace, with laughter, and with joy, cherishing the wisdom you gather and the memories you cherish. Goodbye.